Imagine for a moment that you are walking on an icy beach in Antarctica, the most isolated and inhospitable continent on our planet.
Suddenly, your feet bump into something protruding from the rocky sand.
You bend down, scrape the frozen surface, and discover a human skull. But not just any skull. A skull that would turn everything we thought we knew about the history of Antarctica upside down. This extraordinary discovery really did happen, and it holds a mystery so disturbing that scientists are still struggling to explain it today. Because these bones date back to a time when, officially, no human had ever set foot on this frozen continent. But before we dive into this fascinating enigma, let me take you on a journey through time to this forgotten land at the end of the world. Antarctica has not always been the frozen desert we know today. Millions of years ago, when dinosaurs ruled the Earth, this continent was green, covered with lush forests and crisscrossed by freshwater rivers. Prehistoric creatures lived there peacefully, unaware that one day their tropical paradise would be transformed into the most hostile environment on the planet. But when humanity began to populate the world, Antarctica had already become an impenetrable ice fortress. With temperatures regularly plunging to -60 degrees Celsius, winds that can knock you off your feet, and total isolation, this continent seemed like the last place on Earth where humans could survive. For centuries, sailors from around the world told legends about this mysterious southern land. They called it Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land, and imagined that it existed to balance the continental masses of the north. But no one had ever seen it with their own eyes. At least, not officially. For this is where the story becomes intriguing. In the oral traditions of Polynesia, there are tales of the extraordinary voyage of a navigator named Huite Ranjora, who is said to have sailed south in the 7th century AD. The descriptions of his journey are striking: dark waters, a sunless sky, rocks rising magically from the waves, and huge white cliffs. These elements strangely correspond to the Antarctic landscapes we know today. The Polynesians were the undisputed masters of ocean navigation. They could cross thousands of kilometers of ocean guided only by the stars, currents, and bird flights. Could they have reached the shores of Antarctica long before anyone else? It's possible, but without tangible evidence, it remains the stuff of legend. Official history tells us that Antarctica was discovered in 1822 by Russian explorer Fabian von Bellingshausen. Soon after, other American and British expeditions followed, ushering in the age of modern Antarctic exploration. This is precisely why what happened on January 7, 1985, was so shocking. On that day, Daniel Torres Navarro, a Chilean scientist, was exploring a remote beach called Yamana Beach, near Cape Shiref on Livingston Island. He was quietly collecting marine debris when, at exactly 4:35 p.m., something extraordinary emerged from the rocky sand beneath his hands. The back of a human skull. Imagine his shock. He was on a continent where no human had ever lived permanently, and now he was holding in his hands the remains of a person who had died long before Antarctica was even officially discovered. Analysis revealed astonishing details. The skull belonged to a young woman, probably of South American origin, possibly Chilean. Her features suggested she was of mixed race, probably descended from indigenous and European ancestors. But most disturbing of all, dating placed her death between 1819 and 1825. Think about those dates. This woman died before humanity even officially recognized the existence of Antarctica. How is that possible? The story becomes even more mysterious. 8 years later, in January 1993, Torres returned to the same beach. And there, just a few meters from his original discovery, he found a human femur. Then, as he searched further, other fragments were discovered. But despite all these discoveries, the mystery of this woman's identity remains unsolved. No logbook, no personal belongings, no historical records have ever been found to explain her presence on this Antarctic beach. Scientists have come up with several fascinating theories. The most likely is that she was part of a seal hunting expedition in the 19th century. At that time, European demand for seal fur and oil was driving hunters to increasingly remote and dangerous waters. Perhaps she was a crew member, or even a stowaway. On these perilous expeditions, death was common. She may have fallen ill and been abandoned, a practice that was unfortunately common on these unforgiving voyages. Or perhaps she died at sea and her body drifted to this remote beach, carried by the currents and storms of the Southern Ocean. Another even more intriguing possibility is that she was part of a South American indigenous group that attempted to sail south, perhaps for hunting or even exile. The Yagan and Mapuche peoples were experienced navigators who knew the cold waters of southern Chile well. But here's what makes this story even more frustrating. Despite all the advances of modern science, we still don't have a definitive answer. Researchers had planned to use DNA analysis to confirm whether all the bones belonged to the same person, but these tests were never made public. Antarctica presents a cruel paradox for DNA preservation. On the one hand, the freezing temperatures can perfectly preserve biological material. But on the other hand, these bones have probably been exposed to saltwater and extreme coastal conditions for decades, which significantly degrades DNA. This groundbreaking discovery raises troubling questions that challenge our understanding of Antarctic history. Were there other undocumented voyages to this continent before the 19th century? Could indigenous groups have reached Antarctica on secret expeditions? Were European hunters exploring these waters much earlier than we think? And above all, who was this mysterious woman? What was her name? Where exactly did she come from? What tragedy led her to this icy beach where she would rest for more than a century and a half? Her story remains a complete mystery, but it reminds us that Antarctica still holds many secrets beneath its eternal ice. With global warming causing glaciers to melt, who knows what other extraordinary discoveries await us in the years to come? This anonymous woman from Antarctica haunts us with her mystery, but she also fascinates us with what she represents. Proof that human history still has its dark corners, enigmas that defy our understanding of the past and remind us that our planet jealously guards its most precious secrets.